today we're going to work on texture and value and form. So I'm going to have you do a total of 6 boxes of texture, a value scale, and a sphere. On this one piece of the Bristol paper, I'm going to take my template that I made from our first exercise and use it. I'm going to put 4 boxes on this paper. Try to square it off. Could eyeball it a little better. Again, these are just exercises, so they don't have to be perfect. They are for learning and experimenting and having a little fun. So there's my 4 boxes for texture. This is just a regular piece of bond paper. It's thinner, and I'm going to need the thinner paper for the rubbing texture, and we'll get to that in a sec. So we'll just make 2 boxes on this paper. And these will be our illusion, actually drawing physical texture. This will be rubbing texture. And then down here, I'm leaving myself enough room to draw my sphere. And this doesn't have to be real big. Again, to get my circle, I can keep going around until I get a pretty good circle. Again, it's an exercise. Don't go crazy with yourself trying to do the perfect circle. You might find too, as you start shading, that the circle will start looking, you'll start seeing the shape a little better. I'm also using a very light line because when I'm finished with my sphere, I want to get rid of this line because a line will keep it looking like a circle, and I'm going to want to make this look 3-dimensional. And then here, I'm also going to leave room for my value scale, and I can just take my ruler. I can either do it along the bottom here, or I can just make a real short one. I'll just do that here. And I want at least 6 different values, ideally 10. So if I make each one, let's see, if I make them all a 1/2 inch. This is a good way to, just try to get used to not using a ruler for making lines. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right there. I've got room for a 7th. So I'll make that the bottom of my value scale, and I can just erase this other line. Again, if I use a light enough pencil mark, it's easier to erase. You can work on these assignments in any order you prefer. I'm going to start with my rubbing texture, and I think I'm going to take the charcoal because it's going to be most sensitive to a texture. This is just some foam I had kicking around. So let's take a look and see what that does. I'm going to apply pretty even pressure. So I'm not seeing any texture through there. Let me see, what if I try a different pencil? Starting to. That's the 2B. That's the softest pencil I have. So I'm going to stick with that. And as you can see, there's not too much texture. And I'm just going to fill in that square with my texture, and I'd probably find something a little better. So this here is like a basket. Let's see what happens when I try that. So now you can see I'm starting to get this nice texture. Now let me see what happens when I try my charcoal. So it looks like the 2B was better for that. And let me just see what happens if I use my my 2H, the hard pencil for this. So I'm going to come back here and just try that. So I get a little better definition. So I would say you're probably better off with the hard pencil, because look at that compared. I'm actually seeing some weave in there as opposed to the soft pencil. So again, this is a good exercise for playing around with your different tools and see what works best. And that's all you need to do. Just find two different textures and rub them. I just want you to understand that that's the surface texture. Now, that's one way to get texture. The other is to draw it so that it looks like something. So if you go to the assignment, you'll see I've given you some other samples that other students have done. There's also a video you can watch. So if you want, you can refer to those samples. Again, this is your texture, so you do what you want to do. Let's say I wanted to do some wood flooring kind of feel. So I would, now notice, rather than do a full line all the way down, I'm breaking up the line. Because remember, I'm going for texture. Now wood has a knot in it, so I'm going to give myself some knots. It also has some lines, and there's going to be some grooves that are darker here and there. And you'll find that the longer you spend developing this, the more detail your texture will get. And you keep going and keep developing it. Okay, here I could, now notice those are all vertical lines basically, right? It's just how I'm moving my pencil, the little different strokes. Now that was the hard pencil. I could come in with a soft pencil and see how I can't get a really dark line with that hard pencil. But by using using different pencils, I'm already going to start getting some different texture. And some of you may want to use the charcoal for even more texture. And I would just keep developing it until you get this sense that it's like a wood grain. Now the other thing, a texture that you can do is brick. Now notice how I'm holding my pencil. Notice how I'm sketching, marking, and I'm not lining that up because brickwork it's not so stacked. And we don't see all the lines. Okay, so, and then I can go back in, and not all of these lines are going to be the same. Sometimes there's a shadow. And again, I'm going to develop these by taking my time. And it's all just marks. And it's just like what we did in the first exercise. It's going to be one of those lines. And I can put some shading in, and that's going to start giving me some form here, some dimension. All right, so look at the samples, look at the video, come up with your own 4 textures that you want to design and put them in these 4 boxes. And then you can label them too. That would be great. I'll label them with a harder pencil. So this is wood grain. This is brick. And then whatever other ones you're going to do. And then I'm going to do my sphere. First I'm going to do my value. So I would do the value before the sphere, because that's going to help you do the sphere. And I'm going to use my different pencils. Remember that the hard pencil is the lightest mark. So for my light value, I'm going to start with that pencil. So I'm just lightly rubbing back and forth. I could keep this white too if you want. You could keep that white. This is going to be the light end of our value scale. And you know what? I'll do that for the next one too. I'll just take this pencil and rub a little bit harder now. I'm using tone. You can use hatching or cross hatching. You don't have to do all 3. Just use one of these methods to do it. Okay. And you might find there's that little smudge stick in here too. I'll show you how that works. So if I wanted this to be more steady, more consistent, I could smudge this a little bit. It's going to work better with soft pencil, but the hard pencil is moving a little bit. Makes it a little more solid. Okay. Now I'm going to go from my hardest pencil to the mid pencil, which is the HB. I'm going to do this next one. And this should be a little darker than the one before it. And maybe what I'll do before I come to these middle ones is I'll do my darkest one. That will help me go towards the middle. So this here, I'm rubbing as hard as I can. I've got my softest pencil. Remember, B is for black. So I'm using the softest pencil possible and pressing as hard as I can without ripping the paper. And I want to keep this and get a pretty good solid. And I'm just going back and forth with my pencil, getting a nice block. Okay, so here's my darkest dark, here's my lightest light. If you want, you can keep that white, then you don't have to do as many midtones. Now this other one, I'm going to use this soft pencil, but I'm not going to press as hard. And I'm going to do that with this one too. Now all of these are looking pretty darn close to each other. So what I can do here is I can come and go the other way. So back and forth. Again, I'm not pressing as hard as in the really dark one. Okay? So now these are different, but this is really close to that. So I have to make this one a little darker, but not as dark as that other one. So I'm going to rub a little lighter. And if I have to, I can make this one just slightly darker. And this is it. Remember, value is relative, so I'm going to keep going back and forth. I'm going to take my HB now. So you see why I started at the real dark, because if I kept going, I would have made them pretty much all too much the same. So these two are pretty close. So what I'm going to do now is take this HB and go over the 2B. Okay. Again, I want to keep this one darker, but not as dark as the one below it. And then this is lighter. This is lighter. Still, this should be lighter. So what I'm going to do is take my smudge stick and try to take what's already there and smudge that around. I'm going to do that with these two and see what happens. See if I can get more of a overall shade and see if I can get them to separate out. So they're starting to a little bit. They're pretty subtle, those changes. Now what I think I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to take my eraser. You can either use the gummy one or this other one that's in the kit. And this one that I said you could leave white, I'm going to just really go, I'm a very light touch with that eraser and picking up what's there. So now I've got this nice separation out from this one to this one. And I can lift off some of this other one, the next one down. And start separating these out a little bit more. Come back with my smudge stick, and actually I'll start down here because I've got some dark on there. And you can just go back and forth until you get at least 6 different increments of value. Now these are kind of close, so I'd probably erase a little bit more of this box, and I can erase even more of this one. Okay, so now those two are still a little close, so I can erase this one a little bit more, and then erase this completely. There we go. I have 6 different, and I'm squinting, I'm checking. These are still kind of close, but I think you have the idea. Just go back and forth until they're very distinct. Okay, so now that I have my different values, it's going to make me easy to do this, make it easy for me to do this sphere. Looking at the assignment, you'll see that there's a light area where the light's hitting it. So I'm going to keep that open. I'm going to keep the white of the paper there. And then I'm going to have some midtones. I'm using my HB. Notice I'm using a curvilinear line, and I'm going with the shape of the sphere. That's going to help it round, stay round, okay? And I can put a little bit here too. And I can work on my out shape too. Remember, I don't want a line, so I'm going to come right off that line with some shade, and you'll see that line disappears. I can go in with my softer pencil to get these darker areas. I can see I could round that out a little bit more. Bring this up there. And then if you want, there is a little bit of reflected light, so you could actually kind of erase that a little bit. You're going to find that helps your shape too, because if we lose the eye would be tricked to think that's round. And then I'm going to put a real dark. My darkest dark is going to go right here where this shape, where this form is meeting the surface with that, then with that reflected light. And then I'm going to have a drop shadow. Now the drop shadow is going to keep this in space. This is going to tell us that it's on a surface. It's not a planet. It's not a ball in the air. It's something that spherical that is sitting on the surface. And I can just have this go right into that. Notice how I go from light to dark. If I keep all my marks really light, if I have to, it's easier, much easier to correct. Now I'm using the side of the head of the pencil to try to get some tone here, because I don't want to have those lines. I think if I use the 2B, I'll be, well, that was the 2B. Let's see, let's try the... Also, if you use the hard pencil too much, you'll see it actually makes a mark in the paper, and it's hard to go over with other pencil. So try not to, with this you'll probably be better off with the HB 2B. And I'm just going to go in there, start closing that gap. Again, I'm getting these lighter, these intermediary shades. And I can use my smudge stick too to help me. And again, I can use that to kind of round this shape out, make it more of a sphere. And I've got a little graphite on my smudge stick now, so I'm going to use that, and I'm going to blend this too. It looks a little out of whack with the rest of this. Bring it up in there, bring it into the shadow, and you see as I solidify the shadow, it really starts to look more like a shadow. And if I wanted to bring back that reflected light, I can take my kneaded eraser and make a shape that I can just go right back in there and take out some pencil. I can do that here as well and get right back to the paper. Again, because I used a soft pencil. If I'd used a hard pencil, it would be hard to do that. And you're going to just keep going back and forth until you get this to where... So I've been working a little bit on the sphere and some of the textures. Here I put in some pencil around the sphere, some background. And now I'm going to... So against the light I put dark, and against the dark I put light. That's one way to make a sphere look more three-dimensional. And I'm going to soften my edges, because soft edges help it make make it look three-dimensional as well. They actually start to curve. And I'm using the smudge stick to help soften those edges. And as if they merge into the background, it will look more three-dimensional, and it will look more like it belongs where it's sitting. So you see this line has disappeared here completely. And if you let a line disappear here and there, that's okay too. That helps. That will help the eye. You know, the eye wants to make sense out of things. So all we have to do is help it. This too, I think I'll shorten this shadow just a little bit. And I want to keep that round shape because it's a sphere. So it's going to be giving a roundish shadow. And this should line up with this here. And you don't want your shadow too dark. One of the things, a fun little thing to remember about shadows is if a giraffe walks through the shadow, you should still be able to see its stripes. So if you can't see its stripes, you know the shadow's too dark. And I could even bring this more, round this out a little bit. And again, I'm just using that smudge stick. And I can just work it again and again and again until I get it to a finish that I'm happy with. And keep in mind the sphere, the shape of the sphere, you want these shadings to follow along the shape. Here, that's being lit. Here's our light source coming here where it's light. And that can be as small or large as you want. And then because the light's coming from here, it's going to be dark here. So our shadow, dark side is over here. And our shadow is over here. Again, darkest here. So here I might have gotten a little dark with my background there. So if I can't rub it out, I might just go in and lift a little bit. Not all of it. At this point, I'm using small moves, and I can kind of pull it out too into the background. Again, back and forth, getting your shape, getting your. Now here, this is definitely too dark because I want to show off that edge a little bit. So I'm going to go in with this eraser and lighten that background. Okay. Again, this is just a little dark here. I don't want it to be as dark as underneath the sphere. And I can smooth out with that little smudge stick. Again, I don't really want to see a line. An implied line is one thing, where the dark against the light here, the light against the dark gives us this implied line. All right, I'm going to call that for now. Again, this is probably a little dark. I could keep going. Get a little more finished. And here I've come in a little bit, giving myself a little bit more information, a little more texture. Notice just the difference between the white of the paper will help tell me there's something solid there. Notice what happens when I just smudge this a little bit. So it goes from being white. Now I know that this is all one piece that's in here. It's relating to each other. And here I'm just started a feather texture using a hard pencil. Now I'm just going through with a smudge pencil, this smudge stick rather, and I can just go in. So this could either be a feather or a pine tree. Again, I would develop this more and really figure out what texture I want to do. I've come in with my wood grain a little bit, given some darks, some lights. So it's starting to look like wood grain. A little trick would be they always have a few imperfections there, like an eye here and there. And then out of there maybe another line coming out. So, you know, it helps if you can find things to draw from around your studio space there. It always helps to draw from life rather than make things up. Again, you can use the reference in the assignment. All right? So when you're done, just make sure you get a photo. What I'd really like is 2 separate photos, because I'd really like to be able to see the detail in your textures. And then go ahead and upload a JPEG under the assignment, and we'll see you next time.